Welcome to Law and the Machine, where artificial intelligence meets the legal system, liability, regulation, intellectual property, and the government's uncomfortable role as both rulemaker and AI adopter. The law wasn't written for this.
400 local papers, from tiny weeklies to regional dailies, are banding together to take on the biggest AI companies. It's a collective action that sounds almost unprecedented.
It absolutely is. This isn't just a few publishers. It's a significant portion of the local news ecosystem mobilizing against what they see as an existential threat. They're not waiting for individual lawsuits. They're presenting a united front.
And the language they're using, strip mining of Main Street, that's a pretty evocative phrase. What exactly are they accusing the AI machine of doing that warrants such a strong term?
They're alleging that AI developers are systematically harvesting or strip mining their content, the articles, investigations, obituaries, and community reporting, to train large language models without permission or compensation. The core argument is that this data isn't just being viewed, it's being ingested, processed, and fundamentally used to build a new commercial product that could ultimately put them out of business.
So it's not just about AI summarizing an article and people not clicking through, it's about the very raw material of their journalism being repurposed.
Precisely. Think of it like this. If you spent years extracting precious metals from a mine, meticulously refining them, and then someone came along and took all your processed ore to build their own profitable factory, claiming they were just learning from the materials you left lying around, that's the analogy the papers are drawing. The AI models are learning from, and in many cases, directly incorporating the factual basis, the linguistic style, and the very structure of these news articles.
It raises a fundamental question about what constitutes raw material in the digital age. For centuries, news was information consumed. Now, with AI, it's information consumed and transformed into something new.
And that transformation is where the legal and ethical lines get blurry. For the local papers, their content is their lifeblood, the product of reporting, editing, and significant investment. When that content is used to train AI models that can then generate competing information or even answer questions that would have otherwise led a user to their site, they see it as a direct threat to their economic viability. It's an uncompensated taking of their core asset.
Similar battles have been observed with search engines, aggregators, even early forms of digital publishing. What makes this different? Why is the scale and intensity of this particular fight so much greater?
The difference here is multifaceted. First, the sheer volume of data ingestion. AI models require truly massive data sets to achieve their capabilities. This isn't just indexing, it's deep ingestion. Second, the transformative potential of the output. AI isn't just linking to content, it's capable of generating new text, images, or even entire articles that directly compete with or outright mimic the original content without attribution or compensation. And third, the economic precarity of the news industry, especially local news, makes this a much more urgent crisis.
Focusing on that last point, why local papers specifically? Why is this particular segment of the news industry feeling the pinch so acutely and leading this charge?
Local news has been in a dire state for years. Digital disruption, the decline of advertising revenue, and the rise of social media have decimated newsrooms. Many communities have become news deserts. The content generated by local papers, city council meetings, high school sports, local crime, obituaries, often isn't produced anywhere else. It's unique, hyperlocal information that is incredibly valuable to a community, but often produced on thin margins.
So, AI comes along and sees this trove of specific, factual, well-structured data as perfect training material.
Exactly. And because this content is often behind soft paywalls or even freely accessible online, it's readily available for scraping. AI companies can ingest it all, and then a user might ask an AI chatbot what happened at last night's city council meeting. The chatbot might then synthesize an answer based on the local paper's reporting, effectively circumventing the paper and depriving it of the very traffic and thus potential revenue it needs to survive. The fear is that the AI machine is essentially building a new information infrastructure on the back of content that was expensive to produce without contributing to its upkeep.
That's a profound challenge. It's not just about individual instances of infringement. It's about undermining an entire sector that is already on life support. The cumulative effect of hundreds of these papers facing this challenge becomes a systemic threat to civic information itself.
It absolutely does. If local papers can no longer afford to send reporters to cover those city council meetings or investigate local issues because their content is being siphoned off, then communities lose a vital check on power, a source of shared identity, and critical information. It's a foundational issue for democratic societies.
So, if this is the problem, what's the legal mechanism these 400 papers are pursuing? Is this a straightforward copyright infringement claim, or is this about pushing for new legislation?
It's both, and it's complex. At its heart, it's a copyright issue. The papers are arguing that the wholesale ingestion of their copyrighted articles for commercial AI training purposes does not fall under fair use. Fair use is a legal doctrine that allows limited use of copyrighted material without permission for purposes such as criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research.
And the AI companies would argue that training their models is a form of transformative research, akin to a human reading and learning from content.
That's precisely their central argument. They contend that training an AI model is transformative because the model isn't simply regurgitating the original content, it's using it to learn patterns, generate new outputs, and create entirely different works. They'll point to precedents like the Google Books case, where scanning millions of books to create a searchable index was deemed fair use because it created a new, transformative function for the text.
But the difference there is Google Books didn't then write new books based on what it scanned. It provided a search function. Here, the AI is generating new content.
That's the crux of the debate in the courts right now. The papers would counter that while the output might be new, the input process is a massive, uncompensated copying operation that creates a derivative work, the AI model itself, that directly competes with and devalues the original. They argue that the scale and commercial intent move it far beyond traditional notions of fair use. It's not just learning, it's ingesting and remixing for profit. They might also argue that the AI models often produce outputs that are merely paraphrases or even direct copies of their content without proper attribution, especially when prompted for specific factual information.
It feels like the courts are being asked to redefine fundamental intellectual property principles for an entirely new technological era. The stakes are immense for both sides.
They really are. A ruling in favor of the publishers could fundamentally alter the business model of AI development, potentially requiring licensing deals for training data. A ruling in favor of AI companies could further erode the economic foundation of traditional content creation. It's a clash over who benefits from the information economy of the future.
So, what are the AI companies proposing as a solution, if any, beyond simply arguing fair use? Are they suggesting a framework for compensation or collaboration?
Some AI developers have begun to offer licensing deals, usually with larger, established news organizations, often for more recent or premium content. They argue that voluntary agreements are the way forward, allowing them to selectively license high-quality verified data, which benefits both parties. However, this collective action by the 400 local papers suggests that those voluntary deals aren't sufficient or aren't reaching the vast majority of content creators. The smaller papers often lack the leverage to negotiate effectively on their own.
It sounds like the free market approach to data licensing isn't working for the smaller players.
That's a fair assessment. There's also the argument from AI developers that without vast data sets, their models wouldn't be as capable and that innovation would be stifled if every piece of training data required individual licensing. They view open access to web data as essential for continued AI advancement.
That's a powerful counterargument, that placing too many restrictions could hinder technological progress. But what about the argument that progress built on uncompensated labor isn't ethical or sustainable?
Precisely. This is where the regulatory and policy discussions come in. Beyond litigation, there's a growing push for legislative solutions. Some are proposing new laws that would explicitly require consent or compensation for copyrighted material used in AI training, similar to how music rights organizations manage licensing for songs. The European Union's copyright directive, for instance, includes provisions for text and data mining exceptions, but often requires rights holders to opt out or provides for fair compensation.
So a potential model could be a collective licensing scheme where AI companies pay into a central fund that then distributes royalties to content creators based on usage.
That's one model being explored. It would require significant legislative action and cooperation, but it's seen by some as a way to balance the needs of AI innovation with the rights of content creators. It would standardize the process and provide a mechanism for smaller entities, like these local papers, to receive compensation without having to pursue individual, costly lawsuits. The challenge, of course, is agreeing on fair valuation and distribution mechanisms.
This isn't just about the economic viability of journalism. It's about the future of information itself. What kind of information ecosystem do we want to build? One where the creation of original content is subsidized by AI companies, or one where AI is allowed to cannibalize its sources?
That's the fundamental policy question. The outcome of these legal battles and legislative debates will shape whether we move towards an information commons where AI benefits from a rich, diverse, and well-resourced content landscape, or one where the sources of that content withers, leaving AI to feast on an increasingly thin and potentially less reliable data set.
Considering the key insights here, first, this collective action by 400 local papers underscores a systemic issue, not isolated incidents of perceived infringement. It shows a coordinated effort to address what they see as an existential threat.
And second, the definition of fair use is undergoing its most significant stress test with the advent of generative AI. The court's interpretations will have profound implications for intellectual property in the digital age.
Third, the debate highlights a fundamental clash between two economic models, the traditional creation of original content for payment and the AI model that seeks to aggregate and transform vast amounts of data, often without direct compensation to the originators.
And finally, the future of local journalism, a critical component of healthy civic life, hangs in the balance. The resolution of this strip mining issue will largely determine whether these essential community institutions can survive and thrive in an AI-driven world.
It really brings into focus who truly owns the digital commons and what obligations come with building powerful new technologies on the back of existing creative work. The question for listeners then is this: as AI becomes more ubiquitous, how much responsibility should be placed on its developers to ensure the sustainability of the very content creation that fuels its intelligence?
That's all for Law and the Machine. Join us next time as we continue exploring where AI and the law collide. If you found this useful, subscribe. We appreciate it.
The law will catch up, eventually.